morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, we don't have anyone moving the camera. Yes, Heather, could you move that? And would anyone, and there's going to be going out with the children today, so if anyone would like to come and be the person who moves that back and forth, that would be great. Our usual people are not here today. And if not, well then, whatever. People watching it online will sometimes get a picture and sometimes not. That'll be fun. It is good to be back. I just came back to work on Thursday after a lovely vacation. Many of you have been asking where I went, what I did, so I'll tell you all at once. I went to the Maritimes for 2 weeks on a road trip, which was awesome. And I went to Maple Lake with my family for a week near Vernon before that. So it was a busy vacation, but it was really, really wonderful. And it is great to be back. So a couple of announcements. This morning, as per our usual Sunday way of doing things these days, the offering is collected in the box at the back. And so if you did not see that on your way in, you can catch that on your way out. And we are grateful for your offerings, whether they are online or automatically from the bank account or in an envelope at the back. We really appreciate your generosity. Nancy is now away on vacation for a couple of weeks, and this part's a secret, so don't tell Nancy, but it's her birthday at the end of the month, and she's going to be 60. And so Carol has made a beautiful card for her, and it is outside on the side table. So if you didn't get a chance to sign that on your way in, you can sign that on your way out. And then when she's back, we will give that to her. I don't think she'll be watching this, so I'll tell you we're going to be having a little bit of a celebration. Other announcements. In a few weeks, Labor Day weekend Sunday, we'll be having our outdoor picnic and worship service at Kate's Park. And it's a bring your own chair and lunch kind of deal. And it's a lovely little service by the ocean, and I hope that you can all make it. Other announcements on the screen there. I don't think there's anything else. Is there anything else from any of you that we might need to mention? My daughter Heather is here to be with the children during worship, so if after the story, they can head out with her and maybe have some time in the sun outside. The welcome that we extend in this place is as broad and as deep as we can make it. And so you are welcome here, whether you're joining us online, whether this is the place that you call home, or if it's the first time you've been here, or the first time in a while, or you're just kind of checking us out. You are welcome here. You're welcome here, whatever your marital status, your financial background, your ethnic or cultural heritage. You're welcome here no matter what your sexual orientation, your gender identity or expression. You are welcome here if you consider yourself to be a Christian, or you're part of another faith tradition, or you're someone who seeks to explore the mysteries of life and serve the ideals of compassion and justice and peace. And as a people, a reconciling people of Christ, we also remember each time we gather that we are gathered on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. And we pray that that God will guide us in ways of reconciliation with our Indigenous neighbors and help lead us to better relationship with each other. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. God said, "Light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good. The light is the firstborn of creation. We welcome the light among us. May the light guide us in the way of our brother Jesus, light of the world. Amen. Let's join together in the spirit of prayer and pray together. Source of life, open us this day to rest and renewal, strength and courage, generosity and trust. Receive from us the problems we cannot solve, worries we cannot overcome, and fears that hold us back from being who we were created to be. Restore us to the fullness of life as it is intended, that we might serve our world with grace and peace. Amen. And we're going to sing together again. you and offer the sign of peace through a wave or a bow or a hello. Peace of Christ be with you all.
And also with you.
And if the children would like to come up, I have a little story. I'm so excited that you're here, so I get to read this story. So this book is called A Quiet Place. And if you've heard of the book have you heard of the book Old Turtle? No? Maybe some of you have heard of the book Old Turtle? It's by the same author, Douglas Wood. And this book kind of made me think about, when I was kind of thinking about the story for today, this book came to mind because it reminded me of the ways that we can find places of quiet, and sometimes places of quiet are where we can feel God's presence. So, what's the book that you've got there, Julie?
Not a box.
Not a box. Cool. Maybe Heather, you guys could read it with Heather later. Okay, so this one is called A Quiet Place. Sometimes a person needs a quiet place. Let's see if I can read upside down for the whole thing. A place to rest your ears from bells ringing and whistles shrieking and grown-ups talking and engines roaring and horns blaring, grown-ups talking, radios playing, grown-ups talking. Well, even grown-ups need a quiet place sometimes, but it can be hard to find one. You have to know where to look. You could look under a bush, a lilac bush in your own backyard. When you crawl underneath it, all the sounds of the world seem soft and far away, and you can be a pirate finding buried treasure on a desert island. A bush could be your quiet place until someone calls you to clean your room. Then you could look in the woods. You might find an old stump for a chair or a mossy log for a couch in a green mansion of shadows and sunbeams. It's not really quiet, of course, but blue jays scream warnings and wind sings in the leaves, but it feels quiet. And you could be a timber wolf, the gray ghost of the forest. The woods could be your quiet place. But if the woods are too dark and deep, heron by the shore stands still as a tree branch, and the water is so calm that it looks like a mirror. Then a frog plops from a lily pad, and your face begins to wiggle. And you could be the world's greatest fisherman, reeling in a monster catch. A pond could be your quiet place. But if the fish aren't biting, you could climb to the top of a hill where the clouds float by like ships or alligators or elephants. On a hilltop, you can see a long way and think long thoughts about how and what and why. And you could be a mountain climber on the top of the world. A hilltop could be your quiet place. But if your legs are too tired from climbing, you could wait for a snowy day and lie down in the snowdrift. All around you, the falling snow whispers, shh, and wraps the world in silence. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it breathing. You breathe softly too, pretending to be a polar bear sleeping in a land where the snowy silence never ends. A snowdrift could be your quiet place. But if it's too warm for snowdrifts, you could visit a museum where brass tigers and bronze lions stand silent guard over fabulous treasures. Every painting is a magic window that your own imagination can open wide and climb through. And you can be an artist, admiring your own masterpiece. A museum could be your quiet place. But if the museum is closed for renovation, you could go to a secret corner of the library where the only people talking are between the covers of books. They speak so softly you can only hear them in your head as you read about forests and oceans and deserts and caverns and museums and 1,000 other things. A library could be your quiet place. But if the library isn't open yet, you could come home and clean your room and read your own books and think your own thoughts and feel your own feelings and discover the very best quiet place of all. The one that's always there, no matter what. Where you go or where you, no matter where you go or where you stay. The one that's inside of you. So what's your favorite quiet place to go? You have a favorite quiet place? Yeah? You crack grass. Do you have a favorite quiet place? Do you have a favorite quiet place to live? Not really? I like being in the woods. That's my favorite quiet place. But I also like my couch. Sometimes it's not very quiet there, though. Yeah, if the TV's on or if there's other people around. So you can always take your quiet place. If your quiet place is right here inside of you, then you can always take your quiet place with you everywhere you go. And sometimes, when we listen really hard and notice things, then that's where we can see God as well, and then He's God with us. Because God is always with us. Well, thank you for listening to my story, and you can go with Heather.
metaphor, myth, or story, listen to these words now for the meaning they hold for you on this day. The reading is from Luke 12, 32 to 40. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is God's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourself that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those slaves whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down and eat, and he will come and serve them. If he comes during the middle of the night or near the dawn and finds them so, blessed are those slaves. But know this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, for the promised one is coming at an unexpected hour. May the Spirit bless us with wisdom and wonder as we ponder the meaning of these words for our lives.
I remember hearing a story back when I was at the Vancouver School of Theology. The details are a little fuzzy because that was 25 years ago, but the story was about a church that realized that its money was running out and attendance was quite low. They had tried all sorts of stewardship, campaigns and attendance boosting ideas, but they weren't working. The remaining people decided that instead of just coasting until the money ran out, they were going to be intentional for a year, being generous with their money, and then close their doors once the year was up and the money was gone. They decided to give it away to groups in the community who needed funds. Well, wouldn't you know it, these acts of generosity brought new life into the church. The members of the congregation had a renewed enthusiasm for their church and sense of mission beyond their church. And word got out in the community that something wonderful was happening here. Their congregation grew, and they didn't run out of money once that year was over. In fact, their ministry continued for many, many years after that. I thought of that story when I read the scripture for today, the part when Jesus tells the disciples to not be afraid, for it is God's good pleasure to give them the kingdom. If this is true, then the disciples can indeed resist the seduction of material things, not fall prey to anxiety about worldly needs, share what they have with others, and wait expectantly, even eagerly, for the coming of the Son of Man. This community of faith in the story was not afraid of the situation that they were in. They embraced it and gave everything away, wanting to do something significant in their ending, which in turn both showed them where their heart was, but also showed them God's generosity and abundance. I didn't need to look beyond our very own thrift shop for an example of receiving much more treasure than we bargained for when we give something away. In fact, it happens here every week. I love having the opportunity to get to know volunteers and customers in the shop each week. Wonderful stories of generosity and support and community happen every week at the thrift shop. And I wish that I could share them all with you. But I was reminded of this one particular story, which I think I might have told you before, but was reminded of it again this week. One day, a regular customer brought a child's ride-on toy into the shop to donate. You know those little Tykes cozy coupe? It looks kind of like a Fred Flintstone car with it's red and yellow, and the kid climbs in and uses their feet to move it. So instead of just donating this toy and leaving it in the drop-off shed, this customer found Alexis, our manager, and told her the story of this car and gave her a letter to share to the volunteers. She had bought this car at the thrift shop for $5 for years before for her granddaughter. And her granddaughter loved it. And she got lots and lots of enjoyment from this little car. And finally decided that it was time to donate it back to the shop because she is now 7 years old and can't fit her long legs into this little car. So she wrote this beautiful letter to the shop, and which at the time Alexis posted for the volunteers to read. And the letter told about her granddaughter's enjoyment of the toy and how she hoped that another child would be able to now enjoy it as her granddaughter had. And she ended it with a thank you for all that the volunteers do. So later on that day, I was outside the shop chatting with a woman who had been coming to the shop for about 10 years. And her little niece, was playing with this toy car. And the woman and I were talking about how the shop is such a great place to buy toys for kids because it's almost like a rental system. You can pay a few bucks, get a couple of new toys, they're new to the kids until they get tired of them, and then they can just bring them back and get some new ones. And so she talked about how the shop had been a really helpful place for her family over the years because it allowed them to buy, within their budget and still have some fun, great new toys for their kids. And so anyway, this little girl became the proud new owner of the cozy coupe, the $5 cozy coupe, which we sold again for $5, and was very happy to drive it off the lot. So when I saw this woman again the next week, she said that her niece had not stopped playing with this car since she got it. So it was just such a fun story of this, the way that treasures get shared in the shop again and again and again. And I mean, I think that happened a couple of years ago now, so I'm wondering how many times that cozy coupe has come back since and got another $5 for it again. So it's providing fun for another child and who knows how many more in the future. So when I told the previous owner, the original donator of the car, that it had found a new happy home, she was thrilled. And so she knew that donating that car back that her granddaughter had used not only brought joy to another little girl, but in sharing the story and the note with the volunteers and at the time, it reminded them of the difference that they make in the lives of so many people in the community. Jesus spoke about preparations in today's gospel reading, and when he spoke about preparation, he caught the attention of people by speaking of the end times. Be prepared, Jesus says. The master of the house might return any time. Meaning, of course, that God might return to the earth at any time, and life as we know it could be changed forever. People have been talking about the end of the world since the beginning of the world, or so it seems. This was certainly the case in Jesus' day. And around the time of Jesus' earthly ministry, people were tired of being ruled by the Roman Empire, and they longed for God to come and rescue them by bringing an end to the world as they knew it. There were many sacred texts that are from these early years, describing the end of the world in detail. They are books that never were accepted into our Bible, but they certainly show the mood and expectations of the people at the time of Jesus. When Jesus talks about preparing for God, Jesus isn't talking about beliefs that we might have in our head. Jesus is talking about our faith as a treasure which we experience in our hearts. Faith isn't something that we figure out and record in a textbook. Faith is something that we live. So how shall we live? How do we live this faith, the treasure which Jesus tells us about? We live our faith by living in preparation for God. Jesus says, "Blessed are those whom the Master finds alert when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will have them sit down, and he will come and serve them." Another thing that Jesus mentions in his list is giving alms. It involves giving to others as an act of virtue. And the point of almsgiving, I think, is not to elevate poverty, but to practice generosity as a mark of Christian life. Almsgiving involves more than charity in a condescending or transactional way. Almsgiving is an expression of true solidarity with others. This is a solidarity that refuses to let inequality stand. Jesus is not interested in correcting abuses or disadvantages that tend to pop up in the current world order. His vision is much more radical than that. In Jesus' reality, there is a destruction of old categories and demarcations. Almsgiving isn't about offerings that help those with less money. It's about sharing power and advantage. And then the watchfulness that Jesus demands is not an anxious anticipation of the end of the world, but instead is an eager expectation of God's people living in God's way. What Jesus is commending is faith. Faith that frees us to be generous. Faith that enables us to leave our anxieties behind. Faith that creates in us confidence about a future secured not by human endeavor or achievement, but by God's promise to us. Preparation for God doesn't mean shaping up by making a list of shoulds or to-dos for our lives, things that we ought to be doing, or we think we ought to be doing, in order to be worthy of God's love. We don't need to earn it. God's love is for all of us. In Jesus' story, the people don't clean up the house in preparation of the Master's return. Rather, they simply wait by the door. They pay attention, listening for the Master's footsteps so that they can greet him. In our lives, preparation for God is as simple. All we need to do is wait. Listen for God's footsteps. Try to hear God in the small ways that God may be present in our lives. When we benefit from the kindness of a friend, do we just carry on with our lives, or do we stop a while and wonder how God might be present in that act of kindness? When we enjoy the company of loved ones, do we carry on unaware, or do we wonder to ourselves how God is present in that companionship? When we have a moment of insight, bringing clarity to a part of our lives that we didn't have before, do we take it for granted, or do we marvel at the work of God's Spirit bringing guidance and wisdom? In the small and large things that happen in our daily lives, we can practice preparation for seeing a glimpse of God. We can pay attention to moments that we treasure. For where our treasure is, there will our hearts be also. And where our hearts are is a good place to look for God's presence. The more we do this, the more we prepare ourselves to see God, the better we get at better we will know in our hearts that God is already here. In the story I told at the beginning about the church that was dying, they prepared for their end by giving away all they had, and in turn they received much more than they could have imagined. They had renewed faith, renewed mission, and experienced new life and resurrection at what they thought was their death. What they thought would be the end of their story became a new beginning. Jesus tells us to prepare, yet it is the very preparation that does the work for us. By preparing for God, by getting better and better at looking for God's presence in our lives, we begin to notice God more and more. The more we practice this awareness, the more aware we become of God already being in our midst, working through all kinds of people and situations to bring opportunities for healing and for meaning in our lives. Thanks be to God for each opportunity to treasure God's presence in our heart. Amen. We'll be together in the spirit of prayer, the prayers of the people. Spirit of wisdom, source of our being, remind us now of the power we have within us and around us, because we have been created in your image. Enable us to call forth that power for the changing of the world, that your kingdom, your realm of equality, justice, and freedom might come for all, and that we might be part of its coming. Give us peace, give us reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples here in our land. Open our ears to listen to one another with grace and to work together for the betterment of us all. Bring your peace with justice in Israel and Palestine and in Ukraine. Feed the hungry, make us satisfied until everyone has enough. Make us unsatisfied until everyone has enough, until every child has a home that is safe, until everyone is treated fairly, until we have restored balance to our planet and to our individual lives. Bring your healing to the many around the world whose lives have been torn apart due to political unrest and natural disasters. Bring courage and promise to all who have had to flee their homelands, to all refugees seeking a new life. Bring strength and stamina to those who are fleeing their homes due to wildfires and floods. Bless all political and religious leaders around the world who are working for the sake of your realm. Bring compassion and grace to all those suffering in body, mind, and spirit, and to those who care for them. We pray especially today for Bill and Meg's son-in-law, Sanjay, whose health is deteriorating, for Nancy Stonkus, Alan Johnston, and for all those that we name out loud now or in the silence of our hearts. We offer these prayers with fervor and determination in the way that Jesus taught his followers to pray. And in the spirit of these words we pray together now. Eternal Spirit, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven, the hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. May the light shine in our lives. May we carry its beauty, hope, and joy into the week ahead. And may the blessing of God